The NBA has a salary cap and contract problem, and it is grossly affecting the competitiveness of the league and allowing for super teams to dominate the NBA. This video will cover exactly what the problem is, why the NBA should attempt to fix it, and a proposal for how the NBA could change contract and salary cap rules to create effective parity in the NBA. It is important to note that true parity will never occur in the NBA. It isn't and should not be a goal of the league. Having 30 teams of equal skill at all times would result in less storylines, changing competition, and thus a less interesting league. Teams going through up and down periods is necessary to maximise interest in areas at different times. But it is important to ensure that all teams have the same level playing field, the same opportunity to develop a great team if they manage their team well. But at the moment, small market teams are grossly disadvantaged when compared to large market teams. And this is largely due to two things: a soft cap and max contracts. The soft cap is the first of the two factors contributing in big ways to the disparity in the NBA. The salary cap is set every season by independent auditors, and the players receive around 50% of all basketball-related income to calculate the cap. But this cap is not the limit that a team can pay in salary. They can go over the salary cap in many instances. For example, if a team has a player's bird rights, essentially if the player has been on the team or was traded for in certain circumstances, then they can go over the cap to re-sign them. This is what has allowed teams like the Cavaliers and Warriors to sign huge contracts over the salary cap. The Cavaliers did it when they signed Tristan Thompson, Kevin Love, and when they re-signed LeBron James. And the Warriors recently used this exception to pay Steph Curry, Sean Livingston, and Andre Iguodala after Kevin Durant took a pay cut to fit under the cap. It'll also be the situation Oklahoma City Thunder finds itself in when they go to re-sign Paul George and Carmelo Anthony to big contracts this offseason. The big question you might be asking is, why is this a problem? Why does it matter if teams go over the salary cap? When teams go over the soft cap, they pay extra money to the league for every dollar they spend, and this is called the luxury tax. And it gets worse the more you go over the cap and the more seasons you spend over the cap. The problem is that not all teams can afford to pay this tax, and big market teams like the Lakers, Knicks, and the Warriors can swallow the heavy financial bill for far more years than other teams. This puts small market teams in tough situations, where they have to choose between letting a player go for nothing or paying huge luxury tax bills that they might not be able to afford. Portland trading Allen Crabbe to Brooklyn for essentially nothing in return is the perfect example of this. Allen Crabbe is a perfectly good player, who plays defense, can come off the bench or start, and is a really good three-point shooter. Essentially the perfect role-playing wing in the modern NBA. But Portland had to get rid of him because they couldn't swallow the tax bill for another year. Do you really think a team like the Knicks or the Lakers would let a player like that go for nothing? Hell no. And this is one of the big problems with the soft cap. Money and a big market leads to more ways to acquire talent, build a better team, and ultimately have a better chance at a title. The other half of the disparity equation is max contracts. Max contracts place a limit on how much a team can pay one of their players. This amount is determined by how long they've been in the league and whether or not they are re-signing to the same team that they're already on. But all of these max contracts create a problem in the NBA. They prevent an open market and allow certain teams to get amazing value for the best players in the league. There are around 25 players on true max contracts in the NBA, and a few who have taken small discounts such as Kevin Durant and would command a max contract if they wanted to. And here is the big problem. There is a large difference in the amount of value and wins that a player like LeBron James or Kevin Durant provides to a team and a player like Otto Porter. The same thing applies to players like Mike Conley, who is a great player, but has never made an All-Star team, All-NBA team, and will likely never be the first or even second option on a championship team. And he is under the same contract structure as Steph Curry, a 2-time champion, 2-time MVP, one of the best shooters ever, and one of the best players in the league. When Memphis re-signed Conley, they were in a huge bind. Acquiring talent in unrestricted free agency is one of the best ways to do it. You don't have to give up any picks, you don't have to hope the other team doesn't match, and you just have to convince the player to sign. Many teams were circling the waters and offering Conley the max deal, such as Brooklyn, who had no talent and no incentive to tank at the time. So Memphis essentially had to sign Conley to the max deal or let him walk, and get nothing in return, and be forced to be a mediocre team for the foreseeable future. Or they could re-sign their point guard for way too much money and maintain a playoff team with no real shot at a championship. It is a situation that so many smaller franchises find themselves in. The Wizards with Otto Porter, the Raptors with Lowry, DeRozan and Ibaka to some extent, and Detroit with Andre Drummond. But when teams have to re-sign Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, or James Harden, it is an incredibly easy decision. These players are simply worth so much more than they're paid under the max contract, and thus the deal is essentially a bargain. The mathematical legends over at 538.com once predicted Steph Curry to produce value of $404 million over his 5-year deal, and in the same period for LeBron to produce $309 million, Westbrook $344 million, and the same model projected another max player, DeMar DeRozan, to only produce $61 million worth, and he is getting paid $139 million over this period. The model may not be perfect, and I'm definitely not saying that these guys are bad players, but the value is different, and acquiring one of the players worth more than a max contract is the key to winning championships, as by doing so, you essentially guarantee yourself one of the most salary cap efficient ways to add wins to your team, all by paying them the highest amount possible. The effect of this is pretty simple, but often goes unnoticed by many fans around the league. It hugely warps the effectiveness of even having a salary cap and hamstrings teams who are in small markets and are thus without a bottomless pit of cash to pay players. It creates an NBA where unless you can convince players to sign for deals under the cap like the Spurs, then your only true shot at winning a championship comes when you are over the cap. The Warriors, Cavaliers, and LeBron's Miami Heat have all been over the salary cap and in the luxury taxed, and have all been blessed with owners and markets capable of footing the bill. I will comment here and say the effect isn't all bad. My suggestions for the changes to the cap limit teams from going over the cap, but this would also limit the amount of money going to NBA players. So having the tax and soft cap does allow more money to go to more NBA players, which is definitely a positive overall and something that the Players Union really wants to keep. But there are also ways to ensure the same amount of money is being distributed to players by simply increasing the cap slightly. Anyway, without further ado, here are my proposals to the cap and contract structure to ensure greater parity in the league. The first half is a hard salary cap. In order to account for the money that gets paid to players in luxury tax, the hard cap would have to be slightly higher than it currently is now. This will force teams to be on a level playing field, and not advantage teams with big markets or owners with a bigger checkbook. Teams will have to carefully plan their salary payments and ensure they correctly budget for star players coming out of contract so that they can afford to pay them. The second measure is removing maximum salary for any player. Restricted and unrestricted free agency would still exist, but once a player is off of their rookie contract, any team could offer them any amount of money. This is definitely the crazier proposal out of the two, and many league executives, owners, and fans of the NBA will think it is absolutely insane. But when the proposals are combined, they create a fair market. Teams must pay their best players what they are worth, and it prevents teams from simply being able to spend more money to acquire more talent. Teams would have to evaluate what each player is worth exactly and attempt to pay players that the league perceived as undervalued in order to win. And I mean, imagine LeBron's free agency in 2010. Teams would have been preparing huge amounts of cap space and wondering just how much they would need to pay to entice him. And what would he be worth in today's NBA? What would a team like Orlando be willing to pay LeBron to come to their franchise? $40 million a year? $50? And maybe even $60 million a year. And players would be much less incentivized to take huge pay reductions when there isn't a maximum you can earn. No matter how much money you have, if a team is offering you $50 million, it would be very difficult to turn that down to play for $20 million. This means that teams will have to choose between paying one big star and putting supporting pieces around them, or trying to get mid-level talent and build a team more like the 2004 Pistons or the 2014 San Antonio Spurs. The biggest counter against these proposals would come from players most likely, as many in the league benefit from both the soft cap and max contract sizing. Role players and stars that aren't legitimate top 20 NBA players benefit from being paid more than they are likely worth and more than they will likely get paid if there was a hard cap and no max contract size. Therefore, I don't really see this proposal coming into full effect, but the NBA could look to take some of the principles and apply them. Maybe make the tax even harsher for teams, put less max salary restrictions on players in free agency. All these things would work towards the NBA having a more balanced league and provide a more even playing field for small market teams. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA videos in the future.